This is a great day, and I want to thank specifically Shahin Mafi for helping us put this together, the tribute to Bob Hayes. I think it is well overdue. We all know what tremendous contributions that he's made to Marshall University. I understand that Shahin has an abiding respect and love for Dr. Hayes that goes back to her days as a student, and I think that respect and love is still very strong today. As you know, Dr. Hayes served as Marshall's 11th president from 1974 to 1983. And I want to quote someone, and I don't think people know where this quote comes from, but a lot of people use the quote, but it was actually Isaac Newton who said, "If I have seen farther than others, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants." And Bob Hayes is certainly one of Marshall's giants, and I can tell you that I am honored to figuratively be standing on his shoulders as the 37th president of Marshall University. I had the great honor to dine with Bob and Mark Hayes and others this semester. And I can tell you it was delightful, and I learned a lot about President Hayes. His age, I think he's about 90 years old, going to be 91. His age may have impacted and slowed down his body a little bit, but I can tell you it has not slowed down his mind. He is still as sharp as a tack. I discovered that Bob first came to Marshall in 1965, and I did a little studying. I was in 5th grade, by the way. He was named the Dean of Education, or back then it was the Dean of the Teachers College. And he had grown up in Harrison County, West Virginia, served our country in World War II, and then went on to get a bachelor's degree from Asbury's College. He taught school and was a principal in Kansas before getting his PhD from the University of Kansas in 1960. He stepped in as interim president of Marshall University in 1974 in the summer, and then was named the permanent president of Marshall in November of that year. I think that Bob will forever be known as the president who created the Marshall School of Medicine, or the Joan C. Edwards School of Medicine, in 1977. This is truly an enduring legacy, which really put Marshall on a new path to greatness. I wanted to share with you something out of Bob's book, and this is not the one that he autographed for me, which I have in my office at home. This is a copy I have in my office here on campus, so I've got several copies. But it says that when Bob went to his office as president in 1974, there were 4 things on the desk that he looked at. And one was a Veterans Administration letter announcing that Marshall had been selected as a new site for a new medical school. And then it says, "but with reservations." The second thing that he found on the desk was a self-study which served as the first application for accreditation for the medical school. The third thing he found was a draft of the accreditation survey team's report, and the fourth thing he found was a letter from the LCMEA denying accreditation. So he had a daunting task in front of him in terms of creating that medical school. He went on to meet with Charles Corman, who was heading up this project to create the medical school, and he learned that there was a grand total of $7,000 in the bank that was to be used to create the medical school. So that's the title of the book, if you haven't read it, is $7,000 in the bank, and that's what he started with, and he was able to turn that into the wonderful medical school that we all know today as Marshall's Medical School. He did other things at Marshall. That was, in my view, one of his major accomplishments. But he also created the School of Science at Marshall. He was restructuring some colleges and created the School of Science while he was president. And then he went on to create the Marshall University Community College and Technical College, which then became a separate institute, the Mount West Community College, about 8 years ago. And that was certainly Bob's legacy as well. After he served as president, he went on to, he retired in 1990, and then went to Florida and was an interim president at Warner Southern College for about a year, and then came back to Marshall. And when he came back, he served as interim dean of business. And then after that, he became provost. And then after that, he went on to provide leadership in the Marshall Community and Technical College. So you can see that Bob Hayes wore many hats at Marshall and did many great things. And I want to publicly thank Bob Hayes for his great contributions and his service to Marshall University. He is a giant among Marshall's giants, and he is, of course, a true son of Marshall. And I am proud and thankful that I had the opportunity to meet him and befriend him and learn from him. He is a great asset to this university. So thank you, President Hayes. It's been my great honor to know you. Thank you.
I had the pleasure of working at this institution for 54 years. And I don't remember anyone that exhibited more leadership skills than our guest of honor today. I remember when he first came here, he was in a tiny office on the 3rd floor of Old Main. He came in to teach summer school. Am I right, President Hayes? Am I right? And that's where I first became acquainted with him. We shared offices next door to each other for a number of years. And what I observed about him was that he had this, what the country boy would say, a real dogged determination. When he made up his mind to accomplish something, he didn't stop until it was accomplished. And the med school is a shining example of that great accomplishment. I was proud to be a part of the faculty here during the time of his presidency. No one can fault him for anything but excellence during his time as president. I know dessert's being served, so I'll be brief. I have to say that the only time that I ever knew him to be wrong, when Shahin's brother attended the first football game that he ever attended at this institution, and that football game was against Moorhead. And we had a young coach, Frank Elwood, and rightfully so, Bob Hayes believed him 100%. And he made a statement, Dr. Hayes did, before the game that we were going to win. Sadly, we didn't win. That's the only time that I ever knew that he ever made a mistake. I'll close by saying something from a poem of Robert Frost. I won't tell you the poem, but it's there. And it's a line in that particular poem that says, "Have you ever thought of the right thing to say too late?" And maybe I haven't said all the right things I should say, Dr. Hayes, but you are, as the President said, a giant. Thank you.
I don't know how many of the friends that are here knew Bob well enough to know that he and his wife Katie had a missionary heart. And you've heard mentioned a couple of times here Warner Southern College. I don't know if it was my husband's friendship or if it was that missionary call that took Bob to Warner Southern. This is a small church college, and my husband was there serving on the board, and he realized after a few meetings that its life was going to be short-lived unless someone could step in and correct the situation. Who did he know that would be able to do that? Of course, Dr. Bob Hayes, and he had just retired, so perfect setup. He went there for 6 months, and that 6 months turned into 18 months. At the end of 18 months, there was a new president. Part of the faculty was no longer there. Some of the faculty had been recognized and had been given promotions and raises. Well, Bob left there not only with the morale running high, but with directives in place that they were to carry out and marching orders to go forward, and forward they did. And I recently visited there, and I saw a campus that was transformed. I saw a curriculum that was greatly expanded. I saw morale at its peak. I saw in student enrollments that had increased every year, and now they have a housing shortage. But the consensus as I went about that campus from the president on down was summed up when one of the professors, Dr. Carr, who said, "We are so grateful that Bob Hayes came to us. He had wisdom. He had great assessment skills. He was able to isolate the needs, not only isolate the needs, but set a plan in forth to correct them. He took action, and he did it." And that's my friend Bob Hayes, not just in the academic world, but among his friends. He leaves no stone unturned. And so I say, as your friend, and I'm sure friends in the room will agree with me, a man of wisdom, a man who leaves no stone unturned in his assessment, a man who can isolate needs, and certainly a man who carries out a plan. So, Bob, from all of your friends in Lake Wales, Florida, as well as here, God bless you.
I am here today to express my personal admiration and respect for Dr. Bob Hayes. When Dr. Hayes expressed an interest in coming to RCBI, let me tell you, I was thrilled. I was surprised, and I was thrilled. Let me put that in perspective for you. We've heard a lot about Dr. Hayes today. While Dr. Hayes was out serving as an interim president, as president, and then on the side creating a community college and developing a med school, and creating what was dubbed the decade of progress in Marshall University. Can anybody guess how old I was? Not you, Charlie. Dr. Hayes, you are a giant. And it is with true admiration that I stand here. And several of your colleagues here, Crystal Maynard and Ed Black, Charlie Harrison, are all here today to also celebrate this. Dr. Hayes came to RCBI in 2007, and he told me, "I'll stay 1 year, and I will help with the curriculum development and develop wonderful, strong machinist programs." And Dr. Hayes did just that. And let me tell you, he got to know every aspect of what it takes to become a good machinist. He worked with industry, he worked with the students, he helped develop a nationally certified program that continues today. I would see students entering Dr. Hayes' office, and they may go in and, "I know all this, and I'm going to tell him just the way it was." Let me tell you, they came out with a different tune. I also witnessed Dr. Hayes interact with counterparts, which was briefly noted just a moment ago, across this country. Dr. Hayes spans the country with his reach, and people admire him, respect him, and they were always there to help us when we needed that. We were very fortunate to have Dr. Hayes with us, and not only for that 1 year, but he stayed 5 years, and we'd welcome him back tomorrow if he'd come. It's been noted that Dr. Hayes grew up in my neck of the woods, in north central West Virginia, in Clarksburg. And I would sit and have sat for many, many hours listening to the stories of how Dr. Hayes grew up. It was a very diversified youth, and it was always astonishing to hear all the different aspects of the things he's done. We've heard from the friends and education, communities and education, but from an economic development perspective, let me just be very clear in telling you our belief is that Dr. Hayes is an engine. He is an engine that is powered by the love of learning, and that engine drives others to succeed. Congratulations, Dr. Hayes, and your office is still there.
I was asked to speak about my granddad on behalf of the family. I sat down with my parents the other day to talk about him and to talk about what I might say today. I knew I wanted to share what the medical school and everything he contributed to was meant for me personally, as well as our shared passion for curriculum development and program accreditation. But what we ended up talking about and what I also wanted to share was the more personal side of Granddad that I've had a chance to know as well. Born and raised in Clarksburg, West Virginia, my granddad became a Marine in 1944 and then began his long career as a teacher. So watching him over the years, I've learned to love God, family, our country, the state of West Virginia, and Clarksburg pepperoni rolls. One of my favorite memories of Granddad occurred when I was about 12 years old. He took me to Burger King, which is one of his known staple restaurants. I'm not sure what prompted this, but he decided to sit me down and educate me on how to properly fire somebody. And the importance of keeping records and documentation of their performance. So I remember actually thinking that this was the last thing I cared about in my preteen dramatic life, but I can say now that I've used this advice and so much more over and over again. I was fortunate enough to know that I had an interest in the medical field ever since high school. Although I was raised to love Marshall, obviously, and my family never did pressure me to attend college here and subsequently medical school. I really didn't even appreciate the connection until I first visited the campus and met with Dean McCowan, actually. When you come into the administrative suite at Marshall, there's a printer on the right side with this newspaper clipping above it. So I remember standing there and reading it over and over before I had my meeting. I eventually did decide to attend medical school here at Marshall, and I'm currently halfway through my combined internal medicine and pediatric residency here as well. I'm working on a master's of education of healthcare professionals at the same time, with the hope of having a career in administration and education. And I can't help but think a lot of my motivation for this is from watching my granddad as I grew up. I'm really happy to be here on behalf of the family and share how Granddad has influenced me personally and professionally. He's a great husband, father, and grandfather. He continues to teach all of us all the time, and we've all come to expect a very large pile of reading material every time we come over to visit. He's goofy and he's fun, and absolutely nobody is safe from being poked or tripped when he's around with his cane. So I watch. So on behalf of my whole family, we just want to say that we're very proud of him, we love him like crazy, and we look forward to many more visits, advice, and funny faces. Thanks.
I am honored to be here today to recognize Dr. Hayes. For the past few decades, Dr. Hayes has been my mentor and second father, a man who has not only changed my own life, but the lives of many people in this room today. Please let me tell you how I met him, so that you too can appreciate, as I do, the levels of kindness this man is capable of the moment he meets a stranger. As a student at Marshall, I had an issue with the registrar office and was told to see the president of the university to have it resolved. I was frustrated and didn't know I was supposed to make an appointment in order to see the president who I had never met and whose name I didn't even know. Of course, the secretary wouldn't allow me to see him without an appointment, but I insisted. So the secretary went into the president's office and closed the door. After a few minutes, Dr. Hayes came out with open arms and a big smile welcoming me into his office. This is the same Dr. Hayes so many of us have come to know. The caring man who took the time to listen to my issue and advising me on how to resolve it. From that point on, he became my friend and mentor. I learned how intelligent and humble he was, and continues to be today. The encouragement he gave me as a foreign student at that time changed my life. As time passed, I graduated from Marshall and returned to Iran, where I worked as a consultant for an American company. It didn't last very long, since I had to flee the country due to political turmoil. As soon as Dr. Hayes learned of my situation, he immediately offered his help. Eventually, I came back to US after living in France for 8 years. Upon coming back to America, I decided to fund a company. It has become very successful. Yet, I will never forget where I came from and where my confidence in America first began. And that was here at Marshall University under the constant direction and advice of Dr. Hayes. Dr. Hayes, I was lucky that you came into my life. You always believe in me, and I thank you for playing such an important role in my endeavors. I also want to thank my other mentor at Marshall University, Dr. Bob Alexander. I will never forget his kindness and willingness to help while I completed my MBA. Coming back to Marshall is like coming home to thank all the people who helped me. Great teachers know how to bring out the best in a student. Dr. Hayes had brought the best out of me, and I am forever grateful. Thank you very much, Dr. Hayes. Thank you.